Okay, so we went over the advantages to having a disability. Now let's talk about the disadvantages. And in my particular case, you'd be surprised to know that I actually could think of a lot less disadvantages than I could advantages, which is crazy to me. The first disadvantage, in my particular case, is employment. I have a job, I love what I do, but it took me a very long time to find something that I love and find a place that my disability was not a factor, which, you know, is kind of sad, really. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I just read somewhere that there's a huge percentage of people with disabilities that are unemployed. I want to say it's something like 20% of the disabled population is actually employed. Don't quote me on that because I'm not certain of the number, but it's a very low number of people that are employed that have disabilities, and it's getting better. But there's still a long way to go. The ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, made a huge difference, but it got to the point where we had to make certain practices illegal in order for things to change. I went through a lot to get a job. I dealt with people trying to convince me that I didn't want the job. I had people telling me that the commute would be too difficult. I had people telling me, you know, that, oh, I would go on interviews and all of a sudden the job description would change. They would ask me, you know, do you know how to do X, Y, and Z, which had never been mentioned before. Like when I talked to the person about the position, when I read the ad online about the position, it had never mentioned it. All of a sudden these things popped up. As a disabled person, you're always told, oh yeah, you know, you could do whatever you want. That's bull. I'm not saying disabled people can't do things and they shouldn't do things, or there are certain things that are not for disabled people. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is telling a disabled person that they could do anything is, in my opinion, unrealistic. I know because of my disability, I'm never going to become a professional athlete. I'm never going to, you know, be a pilot. I'm never going to, well, I could possibly become a pilot, I don't know. I couldn't serve in the military. There are certain things that a disabled person just will not be able to do. And it's a case by case basis because disabilities are different for everybody. But you have to know your limitations, you have to know what you're capable of. But that being said, because of that, because of our physical limitations, people with disabilities have less options when it comes to employment. You know, like one of the things I'm considering now is, you know, I live in a suburb of New York City, and originally I was looking at jobs in Manhattan, but now I'm understanding and realizing that commuting into the city every day using public transportation is very difficult for me. Yes, there are handicapped accessible buses, but they're not always working. And if you've got to be at work at 9 o'clock in the morning and you're going through rush hour in Manhattan, you can't spend 20 minutes trying to get onto a bus. It's just not practical. And that's what I'm saying. You have to be practical. You know, I'm understanding that my options are limited, but that also means that there are still options out there. It's just that there are fewer, and you've got to be more selective as to what you can do and what you are capable of doing. And the second disadvantage for me was dating and relationships. Again, it's the same thing as employment, where yes, you can go dating, and you know, dating is possible for a disabled person, but again, your options are slightly lower. And it's because of society in general. I'm being completely honest here. It's a lot of people look at somebody with a disability and go, yeah, they're attractive, yeah, they seem kind of cool, but what do I have to deal with? Like, what's the stuff I don't know about? What is the stuff that down the line is going to become an issue? And honestly, that's the same about anybody. Like, somebody without a disability, there could be issues that you don't know about, or, you know, things that you'd not expected, or somebody that's perfectly healthy all of a sudden could be in a car accident and become disabled. Are you going to stop dating that person because their life just got a little bit more difficult? No. I mean, unless you're that type of person, which I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, dating has always been difficult for me. Well, up until about almost 5 years ago when I met Katie, because Katie is awesome and my disability was never an issue. It's that hurdle that you've got to get over. You've got to find that person that just cares about you for you, and you know, the other stuff is just, oh, we'll deal with it. You know, it's not a huge deal. It took me a long time to find somebody that was like that. I've dated women who all of a sudden, you know, everything was fine, everything was perfect, and all of a sudden it was like, yeah, this is not gonna fly. You know, the disability, you know, it's a lot more than I can handle, and blah blah blah. I actually had somebody whose parents told her not to date me because if we got serious and, you know, became married, you know, got married or whatever, she wouldn't be my wife, she would be my caretaker. I mean, yeah, there are people like that out there. So yes, dating is more difficult, but it is doable. So there's definitely a disadvantage to having a disability in the dating world. It makes things more difficult. You've got to find that person. Disability is not an issue. That being said, my advice to you is, if you are out there and you have a disability and you are dating, do not hide your disability. I'm not saying tell the person everything, do not spill your guts on the first date, but do not pretend that you don't have a disability. Be upfront about it. Say, yes, I have a disability. And you can even say, these are the issues that it comes with. Like, not everything, but like, it doesn't, you phrase it as, it doesn't stop me from doing X, Y, and Z. You know, it's an issue, but it's not that big of a deal. And then when you get into a more serious relationship and you've been dating somebody for a little while, this is what Katie and I did. I basically said to her, listen, you know, I have this disability, obviously you know. Go online, look at, this is the disability I have, look at, you know, don't go to Wikipedia because their sources are shady. Go to a reputable website, go to the Spina Bifida Foundation, go to the March of Dimes, go to, you know, a medical website, look up what Spina Bifida is, what the symptoms are and everything, and then come back to me with any questions. Ask me, talk to me, and we can discuss what my limitations are, what my capabilities are, what the issues are that are going to present themselves, you know, where the problems lie, and then we'll work with them. So yes, it is a disadvantage, but it's not something that should prevent you from going out there and finding that person. Okay, the last disadvantage to me having a disability is the physical toll. And this, I have to throw like a caveat in there, because this only became an issue for me relatively recently, and I'm sure part of it has to do with the fact that I'm getting older, which is, it's part of life, and this is something that will affect everybody. But I find myself getting physically exhausted much quicker than I used to. You know, I get tired out very easily. Today, I went grocery shopping, and by the time I got done, you know, home, I was done. Like, that was like it for me for the day. Not that I'm gonna go home and go to bed and whatever, but I can't do running around 47 different places like I used to. I can't, go out and do a bunch of stuff, spend the whole day out, and then come home and do a bunch of stuff. It just physically, you can't do it. And like I said before, using the crutches, I'm essentially doing a push-up every time I take a step. Which, for those of you that have Fitbits and you know how many steps you take a day, imagine that number of steps, which is probably in the thousands, imagining that as a push-up. So yeah, it's gonna get tiring, and I understand that, and it's a disadvantage, obviously, but for me, it's more of a psychological disadvantage, because I know that I can't do what I used to be able to do, or, I have to plan out, like, well, if I'm gonna do this later on, I can't do this now, because by the time later on comes, I'm gonna be too tired. So, it definitely is a disadvantage. But amazingly, what was that, 3 disadvantages as opposed to a ton of advantages? I think that's pretty impressive.